Hey YouTube, it's Faye, and for today's video, I'm going to answer a question that I get all the time, and that is, how on earth did I get started in the automotive industry? Especially with coming from a very different background, something not automotive at all. And I'm going to tell you that story here in just a second. But first, I want to thank Napa so much for encouraging me to make this video. This is something I've been meaning to do for you guys for a really long time, because I've gotten asked so many times, but I'm not much of a storyteller, and my channel is mostly DIY stuff. And although this could be seen as a DIY tutorial, I'm going to encourage you not actually to follow my path, but maybe learn from my mistakes and make your own path. And if there's anything that you get at the end of this video, I'm hoping that it is encouragement to follow your heart and your intuition and realize where your passion is and pursue that, but also realize that there's no right or wrong way. Maybe my way was wrong, but I still ended up here, right? There's no right or wrong way to get into the automotive industry. And there's not even like a right or wrong job out there necessarily for you. And perhaps the job that you want in this industry doesn't even exist just yet, and you will create it for yourself. So Napa's currently on this mission to educate all y'all out there about the endless possibilities in the automotive field, not just as an automotive technician, as myself, or an automotive, DIY tutorial creator. But there are so many other ways to get involved, whether you want to specialize in rebuilding turbos or rebuilding transmissions, or maybe auto body is your thing, or estimator writing, or selling vehicles, or selling car parts, or whatever it is. There are so many ways to get involved in the industry. And here is my little piece of it and how I got started. So often I get the question, Faye, what got you into cars? And honestly, I do not know how to answer that, because that predates my earliest memory. So if you were to ask my mother what got me into cars, she would tell you that I came out of the womb loving cars, loving things with wheels, loving going fast. It was just innate somewhere in me, and I cannot tell you where it came from because no one in my family was handy or into wrenching or even using tools or anything like that. I mean, my dad was a professional cyclist when I was a kid, and he even took his bike to the shop to get repaired. He didn't even do anything to it now. He didn't even tinker on it back in the day. But he did have a couple tractors that I loved sitting on and pretending I was driving. And one of the things I remember from childhood is I could not wait until I was big enough to be able to drive the riding lawnmower. Because I was like, that's one step closer to finally driving a car. Always wanted to drive and just always loved going fast. So I can probably count on both hands the amount of movies that I've watched or at least remembered, but one of them was really impactful to me, and it was when I was at my grandma's house. I watched the original Herbie the Love Bug, and that started my more specific passion about cars. I then started collecting small Volkswagen Beetles and buses, and I knew that I was going to be a Volkswagen mechanic when I grew up. Of course, my parents wanted the best for me. They were not so stoked on this career choice, but they didn't really realize how serious I was until I was a senior in high school, and it was time to start filling out college applications. And hey, Faye, where are you going to go to college? And I knew that I did not want to go to college. Already I struggled through school. I didn't enjoy it. I had a really hard time sitting down and sitting still. And I knew that the next 4 years of my life, I did not want to spend sitting at a desk, reading more books, just learning about more stuff that was not interesting to me. And the problem, though, was that my parents had really high expectations of me and were really strict. And, I'd bring home a report card from school, and let's say I got all A's and 1 B+. They wouldn't look at my A's and be like, wow, Faye, good job on those A's. They'd be like, whew, that B+, we're gonna have to talk about that and see what we can do to get you an A. That sort of thing. So very strict. And with good grades, of course, in high school, I never had a guidance counselor or mentor or any of my teachers tell me, the same thing I would tell myself now, which is, wow, Faye, you're really physically active. You play a lot of sports. You excel in math and science. You're clearly physically fit, and you love cars. You would be perfect for the trades. Oh no, my guidance counselor was like, wow, you're pretty close to top of your class. You're getting great grades. You are bound for college. Where do you want to go? Let's get you filling out some college applications. And I was not about it. Now, according to my mom, I don't really remember all of this, but according to my mom, I did have some backup plans. So when they ex-nayed my dream of being an automotive, or specifically a Volkswagen mechanic, I was like, well, fine then, Mom, I'm gonna be a truck driver. She was like, absolutely not. Another backup was a farmer. Also, you don't go to school for that, so it's also a no. And then I also wanted to be a medium. And apparently, though, you have to be born with special skills for that, which I did not know at the time. I do not have those innate special skills to talk to the dead, so that was out as well. So I was left with, I don't know, going to college. And man, I took a weird path of college. I actually spent 6 years in undergrad. I was so lost, changed my major a whole bunch of times, and eventually just like settled on psychology, which I actually was really interested in. And it was kind of the only classes I could sit through because I really hated sitting down and reading books and learning about things that did not interest me. And about halfway through my college career, I was walking home to my little teeny tiny room that I shared in a house with a bunch of other people in Cambridge, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And it was winter. I was walking through the snow, and I remember passing by this gas station that I passed by every single day, and there was this guy with his Volkswagen GTI with a license plate from Alaska. And man, at that point, I was just like, I was hating life because I had sat on my butt for like a week straight studying for these finals, and I get major test anxiety. So I was just like, I was feeling so low about myself and just wanting to escape life. And I look over at the gas station and see this license plate from Alaska, and I was like, that guy's life is cool. And so I walked up to him and I was like, hey, are you actually from Alaska? Like, did you drive here from Alaska? And surprisingly enough, he actually took time to answer my question. He was like, well, yeah, and this is the whole route I took. You know, he showed me his atlas, you know, because this is, you know, back in the mid-2000s, so we used paper books back then. And he showed me where he was going or what his plan was. He was like, I don't know, I'm just kind of going wherever the wind takes me, you know? And I was like, wow, that is so cool. That is like my dream. I would love to do that. And he was like, well, why don't you do that? Do you have a mortgage you gotta pay or anything? You got a job that's like super important that you can't possibly miss out on? You got a family, you got kids? I was like, I have none of those things, honestly. I mean, yeah, I've got jobs. I've got 3 jobs. I'm trying to make ends meet here as a college kid. But no. I mean, my apartment is like month to month. I have no dependents, and I'm not dependent on anyone else. And he was like, you should just drop everything you think you're gonna do, and you should do it now. I guarantee you won't regret it. You're gonna have the time of your life. And that stuck with me. I could not get that thought out of my head. Over winter break, I actually decided to drop all of my classes and take the money that I had saved for college and buy a car, which was, oddly enough, identical to his, but in purple. And it was a 96 Volkswagen GTI VR6. Amazing, amazing little car. Love this thing. And I packed my stuff and I got in and I took off without a plan. Aside from the fact that I was gonna end up at some point in Alaska. Also just read the book Into the Wild, so I was feeling particularly teen angsty at the moment and just wanted to escape all of it. You know, the institution, the expectation from my parents, this terrible thing called college I was forced into. And I had a blast. I just drove around the country. I picked up some friends and stuff. Some like, you know, some people that I knew, hitchhikers. This was just, you know, flying around the country and enjoying it. And I was headed to Alaska, and I knew a friend in Portland, Oregon, so I decided I was going to stop in, do some couch surfing rather than sleeping in my car or my tent, because I couldn't afford a hotel. So it's like Portland's a little rainy, so I called up a friend and stayed with him for a few days and just got to know the city. It was really cool. And as I was getting ready to head out, all of a sudden my Volkswagen GTI wouldn't start. I was like, darn it. And I asked him for some help. He didn't know anything about cars, so I was like, well, I got to figure it out myself. And thus begins my first ever diagnosis of a vehicle issue. And we're talking, at this point, I had not changed a tire. I had not changed my oil. Actually, no, that's a lie. I did change a tire once. My dad taught me how to when I first left for college. And it flew off on the highway when I was going about 80 miles an hour, and I almost crashed. So that's my one family automotive experience. So the only one thing I had done on a car had been a total failure. But I was determined to fix my little Volkswagen GTI myself. Also, I had a finite amount of money at this point, and I still had a lot of road tripping to do, so I couldn't really spend a lot of money. So I'm like, well, the car won't start. Maybe it's the starter. On a whim. So I got on my bicycle, and I rode to the nearest auto salvage yard, which I can't even remember what it was. But Portland's really easy with public transport. Hopped on my bike, I got on the Max, just went right to wherever I needed to go. I think I actually went to several junkyards until I finally found one of these starters, and it was actually on the shelf. I didn't even have to like pull it myself. I just got it. I was like, whoa, okay, cool. Brought it home, and then I changed my starter. And don't be too impressed, because it took me the entire day to change out the starter. I had no repair manual. I had no idea what I was doing. And the front bolt actually is the motor mount as well. So I pulled the bolt out, and unbeknownst to me, the engine just dropped right down, freaked me out. And I also didn't realize that you had to disconnect the battery first, so some sparks flew. But point being, I got it done. And when I turned that key and it actually started and my diagnosis was correct, I cannot tell you how good that feeling was. It was way better than any other accomplishment I'd had prior in my life. And I had a lot. I had a lot of sports accomplishments. I mean, I graduated high school. You know, I had some big accomplishments, you know, got my first job, that sort of thing. But really nothing getting into college. That should have been number one, right? I didn't really care about it though. Like, out of all my life's work, replacing this starter, whew, it was like, my ego got so big, like, I can't even imagine that I still fit into my little tiny Volkswagen GTI. I was loving this. So, all right, said bye to my friend and I was headed up to Alaska. Well, I actually did not get to Alaska because as I was driving through Washington State, behind a barn, there was this little white car that had a for sale sign on it. And it happened to be one of my favorite cars ever on this planet, Volkswagen Rabbit. And it was diesel. And at that time, we're talking, this is like 2007, 2008 era. So we had like the epic fuel crisis going on, and I had researched about running diesels off of waste vegetable oil. I was a little hippie kid too, so I was just like, oh my God, it's gonna be good for the environment. I'm not gonna have to pay for fuel. The rest of my road trip is gonna be free. Oh my gosh. So here I am, like 2,500 miles away from home or anyone that I actually, you know, knew or could rely on. And I had this weird friend let me borrow his tools, but he was not reliable, let me tell you. So I did the responsible thing, and I sold my perfectly good running vehicle that I just fixed myself, and bought this little Volkswagen Rabbit that had been sitting for, as the owner said, at least a decade. And I thought that was a good choice. So I bought this little Rabbit and decided to continue my road trip to Alaska, but it didn't run that great. It did not run that great, so suddenly I was like, you know, with my previous repair under my belt, maybe I should just spend some time in this city where at least I know some people in Portland, and I will test it out, work out the bugs, you know, fix whatever I need to myself, and then continue on my road trip. I actually ended up joining an alternative fuels club, which was so cool. A ton of different people with a ton of different types of vehicles, not just diesels, but that's where I did learn how to make my own biodiesel and how to make my waste vegetable oil filtration system. Super, super fun, super cool. That was like the real first automotive thing I ever did. Obviously, I had a ton of help from the people in the Alternative Fuels Club. They shared wiring diagrams, they shared tools, they shared experiences. We met together every Thursday at like this bar out somewhere in Portland and just, you know, popped our hoods and talked about what we were doing and collaborated on the weekends and stuff. Super, super fun. And I was like, this is my tribe. These are my people. I know my destiny. I know my destiny. However, I have this problem with myself where I have to finish what I start. And I was also so worried that I was going to disappoint my parents. I mean, that's the whole reason that I went to college in the first place. Anyway, I know I look like a little bit of a rebel, but really, at the end of the day, I just wanted to make my parents proud of me. And I wanted to be loved, don't we all, deep down inside? So I took the path that they wanted for me. So the summer goes by. This is a long road trip, so you see like the years going by here. And I get an email in my inbox saying that, hey, if I don't enroll in classes, I'm going to lose my scholarships. And it's at that point that I realize, crap, I don't think I'm ever going to make it to Alaska. I have to finish what I started. I have to go back to Boston, because if I don't keep these scholarships, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford to finish school. So begrudgingly, I packed up my stuff, said bye to my newfound friends, and I headed back to Boston. Well, I took kind of a direct route because my car did not run that great. It actually ran incredibly poorly. It kind of broke down a bunch of times. I managed to just limp it home, and the engine actually blew about 1.5 miles from my mom's doorstep. There I was, back in the New England area, and I eventually did limp it down to Somerville, Massachusetts, where I rented another teeny tiny little apartment, but I found parking, and finished my last 2 years of college. Now, before I even graduated college, I actually ended up getting a job in my field. I got a job as a therapist, I think actually 3 or 4 months before I even graduated. So making $75 an hour, like as a, 21, 22-year-old? This is in 2010. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. I was like, all right, I'm accomplishing things. Still though, yet to feel that same feeling of accomplishment that I felt when I replaced a starter motor, but that's okay, we'll get there eventually. During that time though, I was so sad that my little Volkswagen Rabbit, that the engine blew up. I didn't drive it, of course, because in Boston, really having a car is more of a hindrance to getting around because you can never find parking. So I just rode my bike everywhere anyway. So it didn't really matter to me that this car was just sort of sitting there. But I did want to drive it. I love this little thing. Somehow on the Volkswagen forums, I was looking up information on what could possibly go wrong with my car and trying to learn how to fix it myself. I found a local Volkswagen shop and I decided to reach out to them and just see if they could diagnose my car and help me out. I met the head mechanic and he and I really hit it off. I was telling him all the repairs I had done already and how I was really passionate about fixing it myself and how it was my dream to someday be a mechanic. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so jealous of your job. I want to be a Volkswagen mechanic so badly. And he was like, all right, well, you're crazy, but hey, I can teach you how to fix it. I can help you. And he was actually at a point in his career where he was looking to quit his current job and start his own business. And so I was there to sort of help him with that. I swept the floors, I emptied the oil change containers, I cleaned the bathrooms, I helped organize the shelves, I answered the phones, I tried my best to be super, super, super helpful, because when the doors closed for the day and 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever rolled around and customers were no longer welcome in the shop, he would spend extra time after work and he helped me pull my engine out and he taught me the basics of rebuilding this engine. I call him my first mentor because he did not do what I've heard a lot of women complain about with their mentors. He was the best mentor I could, or not just women, but anyone complain about their mentors is they just want to hop in there and do it for them. And this guy he's like, are you serious about being a mechanic? Huh, really? Okay. So he made me buy the manual and he just before I was ever to ask him any questions, I had to research it first. I had to come up with a solution of my own first. And unless it was something that was going to catastrophically damage something, I had to try things first before coming to him and asking him for help. So he was like, this is your project. This is your thing. I'll be here to catch you if you fall. But if you're serious about doing it, you're going to do it. He also taught me tool etiquette. He would not just let me borrow his tools. I had to have my own basic set of hand tools. So I took myself to the Sears Father's Day tool sale. And the cashier was like, you're such a good daughter. I'm like, I know. These tools are 100% for me. And then anything that was extra, sometimes there are those specialty tools where you only need, once. And then there are those specialty tools that you need to invest in. So he had a rule with me. Jesse from Benchworks, which still exists in Providence, Rhode Island. He said, all right, Faye, the first time you borrow a tool, you write it down. The second time you borrow a tool, you save up money for it. And the third time you have to borrow a tool, you're buying it. That tool is yours. And that is how I accumulated my first set of basic hand tools. One day when I was and I was still working as a therapist at this point, by the way, and I hated that job so much, even though my boss thought I was very good at it. She praised me all the time. She gave me a raise. I was so appreciated at my job. And I have a rule with myself that I have to give everything a year, because there's always that learning period. There's always that, when you're new to something, you've got that growth. You've got to get into a rhythm. You've got to get to know your coworkers. You've got to find your own place. So, the first few months can be rough, and it's unfair to judge a job based on your first 3, 6, even 9 months. I think, okay, a year is reasonable. So I knew I had to do this job for a year. And I had done that job for well over a year when I was talking to my mom one day. And, I was always telling her, I cannot wait to get out of this disgusting pantsuit and put on my coveralls and go work in Jesse's shop. I was always telling her what I was doing to my Volkswagen Rabbit. I mean, she did not care because she didn't care about cars. No one in my family cares about cars. But she cared because she could tell the difference in the tone of my voice. And I remember that finally there was this one day where she said, Faye, I've never heard you happier than when you're telling me about what you've learned about your car or what you're going to do next to your car or the future builds that you're going to do. And so I just want you to know that if you ever decide that is truly your dream and you would like to, make a career change and pursue your lifelong dream of being an auto mechanic, that you would have my full support. And I'll be very proud of you, and no one can ever take your degree away from you. You have that. You can always fall back on your, on your psychology degree. You can always go back to being a therapist. But if you ever want to, pursue your dream, your family completely supports you in that. And that was a shocker to me. That was a massive shocker. I could not believe that. And it was weird also too, because it's almost like I needed permission to quit. And that I would still be loved. I would still be loved, and I would still be accepted. Like, as if that would be the thing, out of all the terrible things I did as a child, but whatever. I could not wait. I gave my 2 weeks notice that very day. I was like, all right, well, I knew that it was the right thing to do. And so I gave my 2 weeks at my job, finished out. It took me a little bit longer than that because when you're working with people for a living and they've invested time in you and you've invested time in their stories, it took me several months to wean some clients off and, move them over to a couple of the other ladies that worked in the office with me. And I was getting ready. I was selling my stuff. I was getting more tools because I thought to myself, I don't really want to get a job in Jesse's shop because I'm sort of up and coming. I have this idea. He's going to have this idea of me as like, oh, little girl who's learning. I want to start fresh. I want to start fresh with a clean slate. And Boston vibes. I wasn't sure I fit in Boston vibes. And so I thought to myself, the one place I loved on my road trip was Portland, Oregon. And they're a little bit more hip, a little bit more accepting of sort of the non-conventional. So I'm going to get a job as a mechanic out there. So I got all my stuff, packed up my little Volkswagen Rabbit, and moved to Portland, Oregon, where I began searching for the perfect job in the automotive industry for me. And wow, I was not expecting that to be as hard as it was. And granted, I know, I do not look like a hireable person. So let me explain though. I made it very easy to hire me. I took pictures of all of my tools. I made a great resume. I showed up to work in mechanic's uniform, covered my tattoos, took out my piercings, no makeup, pulled my hair back, looked extremely professional, and had all of my experience listed, my internship or my apprenticeship in Jesse's shop, all of my tools, my expectations. I came in asking for minimum wage. I had very reasonable expectations, and no one would hire me. I got laughed out of quick lube places. I got laughed out of brakes places, suspension places, muffler places, and not even laughed out. Most people were like, what are you doing here? Just so shocked. And I don't think that was even that I was a girl. I think it was just because I was young and I had no experience. And so finally I'm like, man, maybe I can find a place to let me work for free. So I was not able to find any place that would hire me for pay, but I was able to find some place that would hire me for free. An unpaid intern as a lube tech. First of all, let me preface this by saying that if you are to be an unpaid intern, I think that is a great opportunity and I highly encourage you to do so, but definitely look up what an unpaid internship is and what it should be. You should never be doing repetitive tasks. You should always be learning new things. A lot of times it's in relationship with schooling, and then you have certain goals that you want to meet and certain things you're going to learn. What I did was very repetitive. I changed oil. I got a schedule. I worked 40 to 50 hours a week, Monday through Friday and Saturday, 9 to 5, and I had Sundays off. And that was all for free. And this is over a year, mind you. This is almost a year and a half that I did this for free. But you know what? I learned a bunch. I learned a bunch in that experience. I learned how to mount and balance tires. I learned basic diagnostics. I learned basic maintenance, every single fluid flush, every single filter replacement, bunch of dry belt replacements. And I worked around a bunch of really smart technicians. And when I was there, I also noticed that the smartest technicians in that shop, it was a big shop, were from dealerships. And I was like, I think that is my next move. I'm going to get into a dealership because I want to get all that really specific training that you can only get from a manufacturer program. And so after working on this lube rack for a year and a half, one thing that I'd noticed over and over and over again were all these Toyotas, these neglected, abused Toyotas were coming in with 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles. And they just kept right on going. And the owners would do the bare minimum. They would never do any of my recommendations, like, I'll keep on going and it'll eventually die. These things never die. So I'm like, I'm gonna work at the Toyota dealership because that is a product I can stand behind. I was becoming a little disenfranchised with the Volkswagen Audi lineup at this point in time, just from my experience in the industry. It's also the time that I bought my Supra. And so I was going to the local dealership quite a bit to buy parts for it. And there was one day where I walked into the dealership. I remember peering through the glass window and looking out at the technicians and being like, oh my gosh, this is so my future. I want to be here so badly. And when I was going to check out, the cashier, she's a really cool lady that also had a Supra, and she was like, Faye, they're hiring for a lube tech, for an express maintenance tech. You should apply. I was like, no way. Oh my God, I'm not qualified. I've never been like a paid technician before. I don't know. And she was like, oh, you absolutely are. They'll hire anybody. And what she meant by that, it was true. What she meant by that was, you don't have to have experience to start at Toyota. They would take the porters that were already working for them and move them up to the express maintenance rack if they wanted to be a technician, or the detailers, they would move them, or even car salespeople. Like, anyone without automotive experience, if they were motivated and if they wanted to work as a technician, Toyota would promote them and start them on the fast track to become a certified automotive technician. So she actually grabbed my arm and marched me right into the service manager's office and said, hey, my friend is working as a lube tech at this other shop, and she really wants to work here, and she'd be great for it. She gave my little personal recommendation there. And then he was just like, all right, cool. He sat me down. He asked about my qualifications. He asked about my passions, my long-term goals. Basically had an in-person interview on the spot, and he hired me on the spot. And I still gave my 2 weeks notice at my, free job. And by the way, in case you're wondering how I did this, in order to make ends meet, I got a job teaching English to Chinese students at night and on the weekends. And that is how I paid all of my bills. I just shared an apartment with a friend. I had no health insurance. I had basic car insurance. I even shared a cell phone plan with a friend. I had nothing. But I was so happy because I was living my passion. I was living my dream. That is what started my career with Toyota. I started off on the express maintenance rack in 2013 at $10 a flat rate hour, and I could not have been happier. One day this woman came into the dealership and she saw me, and I don't remember how we got started on this conversation, but she recommended the Association for Women in Automotive to me as a resource and also for scholarships. So they did have a scholarship available for a local community college for the automotive program or any trades program for women. And so I applied, and I took a really long time. I wrote my scholarship application. I included pictures. I told stories. Turns out I was the only one who applied, so I got this scholarship for a free semester of community college. And this is the only automotive training I've really ever had up until recently, now that I'm doing more training with Toyota. But I decided that I was going to take, in that semester, I was going to take the classes that I could not possibly learn easily on the job. So I took electrical and automatic and manual transmissions. And those two classes were so much fun. I absolutely loved it. But because I was making so little money, I didn't continue the education even though I wanted to, just because I could not afford it. So I loved the one free opportunity that I had. I used it to the max. And then I just carried on learning on the job. Eventually I did leave the dealership and went to an independent shop where I worked on a bunch of different vehicles, a bunch of different old Toyotas too, as a resident Toyota specialist, and got some hybrid certification and training, and that was really cool. And now I work for myself doing the exact same thing, but a lot more Supras. So, and now I talk to a camera too while I'm doing it sometimes. So yeah, that is, I'm gonna have to cut this video down, it's getting very long, but that is basically my story. So as you can tell, I did not follow anyone else's path. I definitely made my own path and just followed the road where it led me. And I encourage you to do the same. Maybe you want to go to tech school. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to find an apprenticeship, or maybe you can find a mentor at a dealership that makes sense to you. Maybe you're just like, Faye, I love cars, but I don't want to work on them. Hey, dealerships also train in automotive sales and service advising as well. Maybe you could go to school and learn a bunch about cars so you can be the best service advisor that there is. Some of my best service advisors actually had degrees in automotive, but never held a wrench, just really understood the systems. So yeah, there are so many different ways to get involved. And maybe there's the perfect job description for you out there, or maybe you have yet to invent that for yourself. What I hope that you get out of this video is that there is no right or wrong way to get into the automotive industry. There is no right path to take. There's no wrong path to take, as long as it gets you to your end goal, which is hopefully a career in the trades, hopefully a career in the automotive industry, and whatever that looks like to you. Does not mean that you have to be a mechanic or an automotive technician. You could be an auto body technician or a painter. You could sell cars. You could sell car parts. You could be a service advisor. There are so many, you could rebuild turbos. The longer that I'm in this career, the more I realize that there are so many, the possibilities are endless of what you could do in the automotive industry. So if this is something that is calling to you, I urge you to maybe take that first step, whatever that looks like to you, whether that is researching local technical schools, whether that's looking up to see if your high school has auto shop class and maybe you sign up for it, or maybe just finding a shop near you and just going into it and seeing, is this somewhere that I want to work? And maybe it's talking to someone, it's finding a mentor, or maybe it's asking someone who's already in the automotive industry, hey, what was your path like? You know, maybe emulate something a little bit closer to theirs rather than, you know, my series of missteps. But regardless, I hope that this video inspires you to get involved in the automotive industry in whatever way works for you. And thank you so much for listening to my story. And thank you so much to Napa for inspiring me to tell this story and encouraging me and backing me in a way that allowed me the time to do so. So, all right, thank you so much. See you in my next video. Bye.
Hi, sweetheart. Hi, darling. Hi, Luna. You want some cabbage? Hi, sweetheart. Hi, Thalia. Hi, sweetheart.